My name is Jhenah Telyndru. I'm so thrilled to be with you here virtually for the Goddess Conference 2023. Just a little bit about myself. I am an author. I am the founder of the Sisterhood of Avalon, which was founded back in 1995. And I have a master's degree in Celtic Studies from the University of Wales, Trinity St. David. And I'm really thrilled to be here today to be talking with you about entering the Cauldron of Ceridwen. Ceridwen is a goddess that I've been working with for over 3 decades. She is someone who is near and dear to my heart. When I first met her and first entered into a relationship with her, I knew her as the goddess of magic, and the aspect that I came to know her in was that of a crone goddess. But over time, as my relationship with her has shifted, my connection with her is primarily as the mother of Awen, and she holds both things. And there's very rich history of how she shifted and changed over time. But I want to talk with you today about the transformational energies of the cauldron, how we can follow the mythic map into relationship with her, how we can follow in the pathway, perhaps in some small way, of those who have preceded us in being in relationship with her. We believe that her story, as recorded in the Ystoria Taliesin, which we know from a 14th century manuscript, which may have an earlier origin, talks about specifically how Llewellyn becomes Taliesin. And Taliesin is considered the paragon of the bards, the one to which all bards aspired. He is the child of Ceridwen, and we believe, both from in the academia and also in neo-pagan movement, that her story and his story is an encoding, a mythic memory of the initiation rite that Welsh bards would have gone through in order to come fully into their power, to receive the Awen, the divine inspiration, this holy sacrament that emerges from the Cauldron of Ceridwen, which infuses their poetry, and is the difference between a poet and a bard. This tradition infuses poetry with the power of prophecy, with the power of creating change in the world, of bringing things into being. And so I talk about things. This is a song I'm going to share with you at the end of the video. So stick around for it at the end. One of the things that we talk about with Ceridwen and her cauldron of inspiration is that we follow the mythic map that is in her story, and the receipt of the Awen, that divine inspiration, changes a person, and it is not easily obtained. And so this idea that her story contains within it this mythic map, this pathway into relationship, this pathway into connecting with her in hopes of receiving some of this Awen, I think is a powerful piece. And I want to talk about her story from that perspective. As someone who follows a Celtic British infused path, a Brythonic path, and is not of British descent, does not live in the UK. My entry into relationship has always begun through myth. And so I see in myth ways of portals of entry, if you were bridges into connection. And I wanted to share some insights around that I have about Ceridwen, her cauldron, and how we too can come to relationship with her, to follow in these mythic footsteps and obtain that fire in the head, that the Awen that brings transformation, that brings change. And so it starts with her story. And so she lives on an island with her husband, Teged Bowell, in on an island called Llyn, and she has two children. One is Priori, who is one of the most beautiful women. There is a Welsh triad that talks about how she's one of the three most beautiful women of the island of the mighty, and Morvran. Morvran is her son. His name means cormorant or sea raven, and he is one of the ugliest men ever created. So an interesting, duality there, and there's no coincidences. There's deep meaning in this, I believe, and so. Because of his ugliness, Ceridwen was concerned that her son would not be accepted by society. So she decided that she would infuse him with wisdom, something that was very highly regarded. And so she went about to create an elixir of wisdom, a brew of inspiration. And this is a process that was going to take a year and a day. And I think this is a powerful piece because it is an interesting thing when we take myth. One of the ways that I like to be in relationship with myth is to apply it to the self, to reflect it within. And this process described in the story has this almost alchemical aspect to it. And there's this inner distillation that goes on. So if we have Priori as the beautiful aspect, right, the conscious aspect of us, if Ceridwen is the divine and we are, and she has her two children, we see ourselves in relationship with the goddess or with our higher selves, we too have aspects that are conscious and unconscious. So we see Priori as our conscious self and Morvran as our unconscious self. Morvran comes to be known as Avgathi, which means utter darkness. And so I like to look at Avgathi as an aspect of Morvran. It is the shadow self in terms of if we're applying it to ourselves. So we all have a consciousness and an unconsciousness, and within the unconscious is the shadow. And the shadow are the things that are unwanted or repressed or cast aside or rejected either by ourselves or by society, and therefore by ourselves. And so part of, I think, the work of priestess and part of the work of being in service to the divine, part of the work of spirituality is for us to come as close as we can into our wholeness, into our authenticity, into our sovereignty. And in my perspective, the path to doing so is a path towards self-knowledge, self-understanding. We need to know all of the aspects of ourselves. We need to make that which is unconscious conscious.
It's like becoming
It's a
quickly a
paraphrase of
monopoly
Young, of course. And so we have our
fandom,
bright,
which I
conscious,
just get
sovereign
like
selves,
a
and we
bad
have that
feeling about, and no
unconscious
interest in.
self that lies
And
in,
we
and
traveled
within
all
that
that
is the
way. We
shadow
spent
part of
$47
ourselves. And we
on
need to reclaim
the
that. We need to
the
transform that
407
because
because
when
the
we
traffic
see
was awful.
what is within
And
us in
I'm
those
always
dark
saying
places,
like
when
how
we
terrible
aren't
it is to
engaging in
go
that
to your house.
spiritual
Well, your house
bypassing
takes
that doesn't allow us to
that
acknowledge the pieces
401,
within
that
us
bad
that need
area,
change,
and there was like
we
two
are
accidents, and it would
unable
have
to
been like two
transform.
and a
We
half
are unable
hours.
to come into
And
wholeness,
so
and
we
those
ended up
parts of
taking the
ourselves that are repressed
407.
remain hidden.
And
So we need to bring
even
that which is
coming
unconscious
home was
into
okay, but
consciousness so we can
I'm
see
not
about
going to any
shifting that.
more
And
shows
so,
west of
in order
Toronto
to create this
and not
brew
staying
of
overnight. Like,
wisdom, of
it's just
inspiration,
stupid.
to be here
Like
in a day, and
when we go up
Ceridwen
north, we
uh,
go
got the help of two
by
people,
north of
a
Whitby. Are you
blind
unlocking?
man
Good for
called
you.
Morda, which means the great good,
Oh,
and
I
a
said
young
to her
boy
as well
called
something about Chris
Gwion
Coster,
Bach,
and
which is
honestly, I
the
can't
small
remember what she said
innocent.
back.
And
But
together,
I
Morvan
think
would,
it was
I'm
like
sorry,
nonplus, like
Morda,
no
the old man,
reaction,
would
like
feed the
shrug.
fire, and Gwion would stir the brew. And Ceridwen would
So
come and
last
periodically,
night
in
I
time,
only took half a
pour more
sleeping
water
pill
in,
again, and
pour
I was
more
up from 1 till 3 till
herbs and
4,
other
and
components
5
into
till
the brew.
7 I
So
fell
this was a
asleep.
year and a
But
day
so do
undertaking.
you think I should keep
So
going
an
or just take the
interesting
one pill?
piece. And if we look at it again, kind of through this Jungian alchemical kind of piece,
Yeah.
we get the sense of this parts of
I don't
ourselves,
feel so
the part of
bad
ourselves that
in the
requires,
morning,
that
like
is
when I'm up,
discipline, that is
and
tradition, that is experience. So we have a blind
I
man
I feel
feeding
less
a fire,
drugged.
which
So
seems anti, you know, antithetical to what you need to do.
half a pill.
And then the young boy who is
Well, I
impulse
was
and
taking a
instinct
whole.
and
I
the
was
unrealized
prescribed
self.
one
So
and a half.
we have the
I'm
innocent and
hoarding
we
them
have the
because sometimes they
experience, and both
go
of them
off
together
because you can't
work
find them.
together along
And
with time, along
stupid
with
drugs.
putting all of these
Anyways, so
pieces into the
yeah, I'm just
crucible of the
taking half
self
for the last 2 days,
to
and I've barely
stir
slept all
it
night.
and heat
And
it
you can
and
tell
get
in my
that inner
eyes,
alchemy
but I'm
moving,
just as
right?
grumpy as when I was
Because the
taking a
piece
whole and
is
having a
this, is
good
that
sleep.
the brewing
So I
of
think I should
this
just keep
takes a
going.
day, and at the end of its process, the 3 drops of wisdom, of
I don't know
inspiration,
what you said. It just
jump from the
sounded
cauldron, and what is
hardly
left
came in.
behind is a poison, such that it breaks open the
Now I can hear
cauldron
you. Yeah.
itself. What remains behind is a poison that burns the hearth and burns the fields and kills some horses and fouls the water. But the 3 drops are what
Yeah, I've
are
gone
the
down to half a pill
transformational piece. And
before and
whoever
spent 6 months on it
was
before I
to
have
take in those
but it's
drops
been
would
probably
receive
3
that
years
wisdom,
now that
receive
I've
that
taken a
wisdom.
full pill.
And
So
so
I thought I would try it because I'm feeling so drugged every morning.
this is the goal of the brewing. This is the
Yeah.
goal of that
Okay. Thanks, Mom.
alchemy. And indeed, when
Okay, so like
well,
with
in the
respect to
story,
this
let's
guy,
say,
right?
before I get to that part, so Ceridwen
My
places her
instincts are
son
don't play
Agadi in
games.
front of the cauldron towards the
I
end of
think
the
this
brewing,
guy's too
and
old,
she's
too
exhausted
mature,
from
and
all of
too
the work.
nice.
So she says, "Stay here in case this happens. I need to rest, but I'll be back." And so, of course, as she goes to her rest,
No, I
the
mean when
brew
he,
is done.
yeah.
The
I mean
cauldron cracks.
when he asks you or
The
whatever. I mean, if you see it,
3 drops
like,
emerge,
is it on
and
Facebook? No,
Gwion
it's just Messenger.
pushes
But it's
Agadi away,
is
receives
it
those
iPhone?
drops, and he knows. So let's keep that in mind here for a moment. Now, one of the
when
things
you
that
text
I
him, is
find
it
in my
iMessage?
process and in my work over time and in working with others is that, when we
Okay.
obtain that inner insight, when we obtain
Yeah,
that
I guess
wisdom,
my instincts are
the
just
fact that the
roll and
vessel
don't
cracks,
play any
the
games.
self that we were
And I know
no
you say you're not
longer
playing
is
games, but you know what I mean. If he
can
texts
fit us
you, text
anymore. It
back.
needs to break
Show you're
open. It needs
interested.
to be
He
freed.
doesn't know where
As we
you're
free
coming
ourselves from the
from.
poison of
Did you
that which
tell
has
him that
kept
you
the
were
wisdom,
a
our
widower?
inherent understanding of the truth of who we are, our authentic
See, there's lots of
selves,
things that he doesn't
as
know.
those things
And
separate, the old self falls away, and a new self is what comes. We are filled with that
could
inspiration,
be
we're
nothing,
filled with that
like it could
knowledge,
turn out to
and
be nothing. But
this is the
if
piece
it's nothing,
that
then it's
starts
preparing you
this
for the next one. That's the way it works.
this merry chase that occurs. And
And
I
it's
think
fun
that
to
that
think
merry
about
chase,
in the
which
absence
I'll
of
discuss in a
nothing.
second, is a
So
reflection
today I've
of
already
the
made pulled chicken
necessity to
and fathead
both
mozzarella
earn wisdom
buns.
and to integrate it
And
in
I
all the
bought this
ways
thing. I
that
don't know if I
we
should
can
return it or not.
experience it, right? So this
I'm
then
having a challenge
sets off
keeping
a
this house
process.
clean
Now,
with everything.
Gwion receives the drops. He receives
It's
all of the
a
wisdom that Ceridwen
automatic
intended for her
vacuum and
son,
mopping robot.
and he knows that Karen's going to be really
It was
mad.
like
So he takes
$300
off.
off at
And
Costco.
the
So it's
breaking of the cauldron
$500.
does awaken Karenwen
And
from her sleep.
it
She knows
goes around
immediately what
and
has happened,
cleans
and she
and
is, as
vacuums
Gwion
and
feared,
cleans your
furious, and
floor.
she chases after him. Now, part of the wisdom he received gave him the knowledge of how to change his shape.
Okay,
And so he
I'm
changes
sorry.
his
No,
shape.
it's
He
taping.
becomes a swift hare and he runs away. And Ceridwen also has this knowledge. She changes herself into a greyhound and goes in pursuit of him. Just as she's about to catch them, he throws himself into a lake, turns into a salmon, but she turns into an otter and remains in pursuit. After she's about to grab him, he flings himself up into the air, turns himself into a wren. Ceridwen herself becomes a hawk, continuing that pursuit. And finally, the wren Gwion falls to the ground and hides himself as a grain of wheat in a winnowing field. Ceridwen turns herself into a little black hen, and she pecks her way to finding Gwion. She takes him in, she eats him, and he is no more. So there is this cycle of transformations, which is a powerful motif, and we see it a lot in folk songs and other tales of this kind. But what happens here is that at the end of this pursuit, Leon is destroyed, but is he? Because Ceridwen is pregnant, and 9 months later, she gives birth to a beautiful baby. She's angry still, but she chooses not to destroy him. So she wraps him in their bag, sets him adrift on coracle, and depending on the story, it's 40 days later, and on Calangaev or Samhain, he is found by a Welsh prince in a salmon weir, and he takes in the cauldron, he cuts open the bag, and he sees this infant in there, and his first words are, look at his shining brow. And that is how he gets the name Taliesin. And so Taliesin now goes on to have all of these adventures, but his power is his bardism, is his poetry. So he received this wisdom. He went through all of these transformations. He died and was reborn of the goddess and received and retained that wisdom, but he was put back into the world. He was continuing to having to be in the physical plane. So this idea of this illumination of the Awen, it is a step-by-step piece. It is that, the ultimate, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. We integrate, we retain the wisdom, the insights we receive by undergoing these transformations, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we receive those insights, but we have to continue the work. He continued back out into the world again. And so this, I think, is the powerful piece. So we can see this if we look at this from an elemental perspective. And if we start here at Earth, the hare and greyhound, the wren and hawk. Well, it kind of goes in a different direction, but I'll show you why I put it in this order for a moment. So hare and greyhound, wren and hawk, salmon, hare and greyhound, salmon and otter, wren and hawk, and in seed, and then Gunan becomes Taliesin. And so we have the 5 elements here being represented. Now, the ancient Celts, we don't believe they had a 5-element or 4-element system. The medieval Welsh did. We see that in the Physicians of Mythic. They used a lot of the Platonic, 4-element system. So this is consistent with the time period for sure. And a lot of us today in neo-pagan traditions work with the 5 elements as well. So this is kind of a mythic map. And if we understand the associations with all of these elements, it gives us a sense of when we receive insight, when we receive wisdom, when we want to integrate it into the wholeness, and instead of having it be a fleeting thing, have it become part of who we are. We need to go through the elements in order to understand them, in order to truly claim them. So we can ask ourselves questions about, we have to integrate through the energies of water, through our emotional bodies, through the energies of earth, through our physical form and our environment, through the energies of air, right? To how we think, our perspectives, those things all need to change. And through the element of fire, which is our actions, the things that we do, what impels us into action. Fire is our will and our passions. That also needs to change. And then indeed, when all of those are done, an integration of spirit, that the revelation of who we truly are happens when all of these are integrated into us. We have change in our emotional state, physical state, our mental state, our expression in the world, and the totality of who we are. Now, in the Sisterhood of Avalon, there's something called the Avalonian cycle of healing, which harnesses this 5-fold cauldron transformation. And it is kind of our guiding force in our work. And we apply this to many different cycles. And especially the cycle of the year and the cycle of the month as well, to give us these insights into the work that we're doing, to harness the energies of the world as it cycles around us, to affect change with the energies that are within us. So the work of the autumn, and the work of the winter, and the work of the spring, and the work of the summer are aligned with the energies of water, of earth, of air, and of fire, so that we are a mirror of what's happening outside of us, which is, of course, the truth of of things anyway. But to consciously align ourselves with it, we are empowering that process of shift and of change. And so we look at these from this perspective that there are two halves of the year. The Celts talked about that a lot. That there is a duality perspective. So there's the light half of the year and the dark half of the year. And we see the dark half of the year as entering the cauldron, entering that cauldron of transformation, of inner distillation, to get to the heart, to get to the root, to do the work of freeing those 3 drops of wisdom. That all happens in the dark half of the year. And then the light half of the year is when those 3 drops have been freed. We do the work of sovereignty. That there's the torque of sovereignty, representing that half, and it is taking those drops and integrating them in a way that we affect change in our lives. We affect change in ourselves. So this is again a really brief kind of overview of those things. We descend into the cauldron at Calan or Samhain, but it's not just the cycle of the year. So it's also connected to the 3rd quarter moon, and it can be connected to a lot of different things. But for the sake of our conversation now, we'll talk about it in the terms of the year and the month. At the dark moon, we have confrontation. This is Blodeuwedd or Llewellyn. So this is the darkest point of the year, the nadir of the year, is the confrontation in earth. And then when we exit the cauldron at Calan or Beltane, or the 1st quarter moon, we're emerging from the cauldron, we're entering into the light half of the cycle, right? So the dark half and the light half, and I have another chart that'll go over it better. And that's emerging from the cauldron. The resolution is the fullness of the full moon. It is Gwil-Aust or Lunasa, the brightest, highest point, the apex of the cycle of the year, the fullness of the moon, the brightness revealed. And so not only is the resolution of perhaps whatever issue has kept us in darkness, but it's also the resolve to continue the process, because the cycle is unending. Just the same way that Ceridwen put Taliesin back into the world, putting it into the coracle, to bring with the energies that he's received and integrated and is part of him now, we begin that cycle again. But we bring our insights with us, we bring our changes with us, we bring our knowledge of self with us, and begin the round again. And integration is the important part, right? Is the totality of all cycles. You see it in the center, it's aligned with spirit, but it is the wholeness of things, because all cycles, they're unending in this way. And we're breaking them up into little parts to understand the whole better. But in truth, all of this work is the integration of change, integration of shift. And I mentioned this a bit earlier, how we have the light half and the dark half of the year. These look like moons, but really it is descent into the darkness. So this is the dark half. That's why it's dark on the bottom and light on the top. So we descend at the dark half. We emerge into the light half. So this is again Calan or Samhain, and this is Calan May or Calan Hav or Beltane, right? Light half, dark half, 3rd quarter, 1st quarter. But the cycle can also be split in another way. So the cycle, we have a waning half and a waxing half. So the full moon resolution, the dark moon confrontation. So those are the 4 when we're looking at it from the cycle of the month. And then this would be Gwil-Aust or Lunasa, and Gwil-Wedd or Gwil-Mare, which is also Imbolc, which for me is the darkest point before that spring begins. I see a difference between the dark moon and the new moon. The new moon is that first silver sliver. That is that part that most people associate with, I think, Lunasa. I'm sorry, Imbolc. So just to put it all in one place, these are all of the pieces. This is the 5 cauldron transformations: descent, confrontation, emergence, resolution, integration. It is the otter and the salmon, the hare and the greyhound, the wren and the hawk, the hen and the seed, and in Rhiannon becoming Taliesin. And it is in coming into relationship with these parts of ourselves, coming into relationship with these aspects of shift and of change. The goddess is here as the catalyst. She is the pursuer. When we enter into her presence, she is going to catalyze shift in us. When we ask for the wisdom of the Awen, how do we receive it? We receive it through self examination. We receive it through trying to clear our vision of the world and ourselves within it, from a place of clarity, looking at things from a place of wisdom as opposed to a place of hurt, looking at it with the true vision as opposed to the filters that come from past experiences that have taught us to be wary, just taught us to be fearful, that has taught us to be small. And so when we can look at ourselves as a whole, break down those parts of ourselves that keep us in illusion, right? That distillation that occurs in the cauldron, so that we can free those 3 drops of wisdom and bring it into all aspects of our being, seeing the ways that it affects how we feel about ourselves in the world, in water, understanding the ways in which it has taken root in our lives and in the world around us, and how we have structured our world, understanding that it has shaped our vision and our perspectives and how we think about things, how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, how we think about the world, and also that it affects our actions, what we're able to do, who we're able to be, how we're able to express our energy in the world, and whether we choose to at all. And so this process of self-distillation, this process of inner alchemy that the Cauldron of Ceridwen, the Cauldron of Inspiration allows us to do, is there in the myth. And she is the mother of Awen. She is the mother of transformation. And this, I believe, is one way of being in relationship with her through her myth, so that we may be reborn as Taliesin. We may receive that shining brow of insight, of knowledge, of inspiration, of creativity. There's so many gifts that the cauldron gives us, a bounty of renewal and rebirth. It is through this process we can follow the mythic map and be in relationship with Ceridwen. So I do thank you. I know this was a very short little talk. I'm going to share that audio for you in a moment. But if you want to get in touch with me, this is how. These are my books. This is my newest book, The Ninefold Way of Avalon. I appreciate your time and your attention. Many blessings, and have a glorious conference. Thank you so much. Cloak of night.